Have you got a glass of water? Yeah.
Right. Apparently we're live.
We're live. Are we on air? Oh, fantastic. Hello. I'm not sure if we're live or not yet. Are we up?
But, well, can you just talk to people like
Yep.
we are, just
Hello.
in case?
Yes, just in case you're there. We're not quite sure if we're set up properly yet because we had a bit of a panic. But if you're out there, hello. And I'm going to be looking at some drawing tonight and setting up print. And Ben is just checking to see that we are connected and we should be open for business any minute. So I'm just going to draw for a little bit. And then hopefully we should be up and running and answering questions and stuff.
Connect. No, got that one.
I'm just sharing the password with Ben. Sorry, we're just getting onto the... Okay.
Have you just shared the...
I have.
Oh, right, I'm on.
You're on.
Fine.
You're in business. It's always exciting when you do. Well, actually, I say it's exciting when we do it. This is the first time we've ever done a remote broadcast, so this is why it's a bit panicky. But hopefully, you can see me, and you can maybe, if you listen hard, hear the whippet walking about. She's got little toenails on the floor. Success?
I don't know. It says here live now. So
Excellent. So we are on show.
Oh,
Yep. And we've got feedback.
well,
So I am working on some drawings because I've been in Yorkshire all week and I've been out drawing and I wanted to talk about how I develop print. And so let me open up my sketchbook and show you. It's going to be very disappointing if you're expecting a beautiful sketchbook because it's really not beautiful at all. So let me start at the beginning. So here are some trees that I've been drawing here. This is probably, of all the pages that I'm going to show you, the most cohesively drawn, and that was because I was waiting in the car park for Ben to finish talking to people at a ceramics fair, so I had plenty of time drawing there. And then we come on to the more useful stuff. So here I can show you the sort of thing that I tend to do when I'm out and about. So you can see really scribbly drawings. And what I'm looking for all the time are just sort of shapes that I really like. I think with this one, I just like this jutting out hill here. So I'm not trying to be particularly realistic about where I am. What I'm looking for are sort of things that I can almost hang a print from. So it's more about what the area is like rather than a specific view. So let's just show you another one. So here's another one. And again, I was quite interested by the fact that the cloud was down over the hills. And I don't know if you can see there, but again, very scribbly, and I'm just interested in shapes and this overlay of these sort of quite spiky clouds over that hill there. Okay, are we up and running?
That's...
Excellent. Hello everybody. Yes, we are. Thank you. Okay. Good. So now I can do some introductions. Now that I know that you're actually out there and that everything is okay, I can sort of explain where I am. So I am in a really beautiful gallery and it's called TheOld School Maker. It is Muker, isn't it? I'm asking Richard, who is the gallery owner, he's just
Muker.
hiding off camera. Muker is in Swaledale in Yorkshire. So we're right up in the north of Yorkshire in the Dales here, and it's really, really lovely landscape. And I think that we're close to, at the moment on the television on the BBC, our Yorkshire farm is. Yeah, and that's literally just up the road from here, where that's being shot in Ravensdale. So really, really lovely part of the world. And I have been around with Ben drawing lots of bits and pieces. So here's another one. Yes, there are some. Hi Anne from Pittsburgh and hello John from Cheshire. And hello from Barbados, Kimberly, that's very exotic. So here is another one of my really rough sketches again, and I love the way that these dry stone walls are sort of splitting up the landscape, and it's really sort of, they're really vague scribbles. Another one, again, dry stone walls. And you have to watch out for the Whippet. Whippet is called Morgan, and she's quite an elderly lady, so she's sort of coming in and out. Don't suppose she won't jump up on the table like Doris does. So yes, there she is. Oh, hi Moira from Paris. So here is, let me even check I've got it the right way up. Yeah, one that's looking at, again, these great big boulders. I was sort of playing with the idea of these dry stone walls again, and what I tend to do, oh here's one with more dry stone, so sort of big and little dry stone walls. So what I tend to do is I go out and I do all these kind of really random sketches, and then I pull stuff together when I get home. So I've also been sort of fooling around with a few watercolour sketches here, with this sort of sheep, which looks very like a Henry Moore sheep. And these aren't like finished works. These are just me kind of enjoying putting together some ideas from my really scrambly sketches. Oh, hi Claire. So this probably won't turn into a print as it is, but bits of it might appear in a print. And again, here you can see, it's just nice sometimes to just sort of do a bit of painting rather than drawing. Ben is still plugging me in and stuff like that, so we're a bit...
You all can see me in a moment.
Bit behind times. And here's one of the waterfalls. I've done a lot of going around waterfalls on this trip, so I'm really excited to be doing some pictures of waterfalls. Round here they're really dramatic, and we went to some today that were really in a dark gully, and I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah, you want me to bring the drawings towards the camera, so let me hold those. Yeah, my lovely assistant is going to show you. So you can just see, these are pen and ink and watercolour by Glynis from London. So I've just brought some pictures to drop off with Richard at the Old School Gallery. So he's very generously put them up on the wall behind me. And in a minute I'm going to get Ben to show you what the gallery looks like. There we go. Oh, the Henry Moore sheep. Yeah, there you go, you can see. So this one here, this was kind of an homage to Hokusai. I don't know if you know his views of Fuji, but he quite often has like a very dark blue mountain in the back of his pictures, so I'm always quite keen to do that, which is why that is there. So there's just some little watercolour. Oh, there's another one.
Did you use your homemade inks?
Did I use? Yes, I did. I should explain, I've been making ink. I had some oak galls and I made some ink with oak galls and iron. And this one, the darks in this one, that's the ink that I made. So really nice. Have I been to the falls in Ascrig? Have we been to Ascrig Falls? I don't know. I think we have. We've been to sort of what feels like every waterfall in the vicinity, though probably not. I think we probably have an awful lot more.
Not even a 10.
You mentioned Hadrow and you mentioned Kisden.
Yes.
And Weymouth.
Yes. Yeah. So we have been to a lot. Here, yeah, I should just show you this one. This little sketch here. I like improbable angles. That was just like, I love the way that dry stone walls in Yorkshire. They just like go straight up. They don't mess. They're not like trying to fit round things. So that was what that is. So when I come to doing a print, what I'm always looking for is like the into what will make it an interesting picture for me to work on and for people to enjoy, you know, if they buy it and take it home. So it's one thing to go out and look at all the kind of fantastic countryside around here, and it's really beautiful, but I have to find something about that excites me, because if I'm not really excited and really interested in what I'm doing, it kind of shows in the finished print. So I'm always looking like for an into ideas. So sometimes like I'll work on ideas of scale, like with this one, which is some birds that I saw on a hillside, and I really like the idea of, you've got a big wall down here and then these tiny trees up here and the wall. So that kind of thing interests me. I'm quite interested in sort of like the awkward or the slightly odd. So I look out for stuff like that. Oh, right, okay, so I'm being asked what sort of info is on a certificate of authenticity, and do I include one with my work? Yes, I do. The prints that I've just supplied to Richard for the old school here all have them on, and basically it's a piece of paper, and we bought one of those like fancy stamps that emboss, that says that it's original print, and it's got my name on it, and then I sign it. I write the title of the work, I write the technique of the work, so it's lino cut or it's Japanese woodblock or whatever, and then I write the edition number on it as well. So all that information is on the certificate, and that's quite separate from any money information, obviously. So that's on the back of the work. But I also write on the frame, on the back of the actual physical framed picture, my name, the title, and the medium. So that's sort of like permanently written on the back of the frame. And then I also hang a luggage label on the back. So it's a lot of information with my name, the title, the medium, the edition number, and then the price, whether it's framed, and the price for, if there are other prints available unframed, I'll write that price on it as well. So the idea is to give the gallery owner like Richard enough information with the prints so that when he comes to sell them he knows exactly what he's handling, and that's all there. So good, yeah, that's answered that one. So are we up for...
Anne Rosenthal was asking what the ink was made from, and I've responded just
yes,
in a comment, but if you want to talk about
the ink that I made, this ink that you can see here, this black ink here, it's made from oak galls, which are little, they're like little round balls. It's acorns that get infected by a wasp grub, and they kind of swell the acorn into a circle of gall. And then when the wasp has left, because I waited till all the wasps had hatched out and gone, and then picked the oak galls, and then the oak galls, and then little circles, and I smashed them up in a pestle and mortar, and then in a coffee grinder, and then soaked it, and then you add iron, ferrous oxide, I think, and let it steep, and put it all through a coffee filter, and then you end up with ink. Now, Ben, you'll have to read me notes because I think mine might have frozen.
No, well,
no?
Yours is just a copy of mine, though. So
that's all right then. So, okay. So to go on with this trip through my sketchbook, here is another one, and you can see they're probably even not very clear what these pictures are of. So I'll show you that.
We could also have a brief pause to have a look around the gallery.
Trip around the gallery as well. Do you want to do that now? And then I'll deal with the addition.
Okay. Apologies, everyone, because I've left the fluid tripod in the car.
So we're off for a jerky.
This could be a bit jerky, but we'll see.
Around I should say the studio, around the gallery, I should say, because I'm in a much nicer place than I usually am.
So there we have some of Laura's work on the back wall there.
They've very kindly hung that there. So I really recommend a visit, because this is not only a gallery, but a gallery with a lovely sofa. There we go. Where is it?
I forgot your name. I forgot your name.
Polly. So here we
that's
have Polly
and Richard,
who are the owners of the gallery, who are very, very kindly giving up their Friday night to me so that I can...
Because this is clearly far more entertaining than anything else they could possibly be doing.
Of course. Without a doubt.
So you can see what an amazing building this is. Really lovely place to be broadcasting from. So the other thing that I do when I'm out sketching is that I tend to take like notes for things that will be useful later. Yep, Claire says hi to you, and it's a very lovely gallery. Oh, Cynthia, hello, you've made it to live stream. So here I have got some sheep. The other thing I wanted to say about drawing is it takes me a while to warm up when I'm drawing. So I do a lot of sketches that are really, really rubbish, and then I start to get my hand in with them. So with these little sheep, I was just fooling about to give me an idea of what they actually look like. And the sheep up here are particularly nice. I found a field with some old sheep in it, and that's what I'm working on tonight. So let me just, I've lost my place now. Let me just have a look and I'll show you. So the drawing that I'm working on here, which I'm developing for one of my little prints that I've been doing recently, so this will be a little lino cut here of these sheep that was on
Lost.
Oh, there we go. Oh, we are.
It's reconnected.
It's reconnected. Yeah, the oval goes darker. So this drawing that I'm working on here is an amalgamation of things that I saw on this walk, and I really like the barns around here. There are amazing stone barns and dry stone walls. So I've moved things around a bit. Like I say, I'm always trying to work out, what will give people an into the picture. So with this little picture here, I like these sheep. I like the shape of them all curled up together. These guys were actually in a field somewhere completely different, but I've moved them here. They were the ram sheep, the tups, rather than female sheep. These were male sheep, and the male sheep I like better because they're kind of more interesting shape. They're more angular. So these are two old boys who are sort of having a lie down, and I was working with trying to. The stones, the way the stones are positioned to sort of lead the eye there up to the stone wall, and then this coming down the other way. So I've actually moved things around quite a lot, and when I come to do the actual lino cut, this bit up at the top will be very misty. When we went on this walk, it started out sort of romantically misty, and then it turned into a terrible rainstorm. So we got very, very wet. But I liked, when we were walking past, we went past a farm, and it was just disappearing into the rain, which I really liked. So I've taken that idea of that just going into the rain, but I've taken the farmhouse out, which wasn't the prettiest building, and put one of the stone barns in there. Yeah, thank you, Matthew. So the stacking it up vertically as well, I quite like that vertical composition, and it's something that I use quite a lot. Again, you see that a lot in Japan and Japanese prints, the way things are composed in that that way. And the other thing about a lot of the work that I do is that I like the idea of the background being a little bit out of focus and then the foreground in focus. So this quite hard in the foreground and that quite soft in the background when I do this print. So yes, I am going to use traditional lino, so artist's lino, the stuff that's made of wood flour and cork flour and linseed oil on the Hessian backing. And one of the things about it is that I've got this tree, I haven't finished this tree here, but there's going to be a lot of fine cutting in those in the branches, and I like the traditional lino because it has a brittleness and it snaps as you cut, which makes it much easier to cut those little fine bits of detail. There we go, yeah, you can see those little washes. So when I'm drawing like this, hopefully with me holding it up to the camera, or rather Ben, my lovely assistant, holding it up to the camera, you can see there's a lot of rubbing out. And I arrive at my drawings in a sort of, I sort of find them. I do a lot of rubbing out and drawing and rubbing out and drawing, and I kind of get there in the end, rather than drawing the right thing straight away. I mean, I don't know if anybody actually does that, but my method is quite messy and quite rambly.
Angie Hatchett's asking about the point at which you would decide whether or not it would be a multi-block.
Well, this is going to be probably an artist support pledge print, so they have to be multi-block so that I can print quite a lot of them, because I'm probably going to do another batch of lino cut. I've got one of Doris to do, and this, I thought I would do a little series on animals, so these sheep would be on that. So I've thought about this. I kind of would like to keep it down to maybe 4 blocks. So I don't want to have too much. So I am kind of thinking about the colours, and I might make this quite wintry and have white space. Right, so I don't think about the colours though. I just think about maybe tonal, you know, whether I need a light block, a medium block, a dark block. If I was working on one of my big prints, then no, I wouldn't give it a moment's thought until I started printing, which sounds really appalling, but I kind of know what kind of weather and stuff, and then I make it up as I go along, because I find that I respond much better that way. It's more like, it's almost like painting. You know, I'm sort of laying down a colour and then thinking what to do next in response to that. And I have like an overall vision in my head, but I'm constantly changing and adapting that. Yeah. So I'm moving on all the time. So no, it's kind of, but for the artist support pledge prints, which are these little prints that I've been selling, I have to be more organised with that because I'm printing lots of these. And so if I'm doing them as a multi-block, then yes, I have to think in terms of how many blocks. Okay, so we've got a conversation about modern and traditional lino, the differences. So there are products for sale which are made of vinyl, and I think they're sort of rubber and vinyl. I'm looking at Ben in case he knows. They're
No idea.
Easy cut. They're usually called easy cut, or they're Japanese lino, or they're vinyl, or soft cut is another name. And for some people they are really, really good, and I have tried them. The reason I don't use them is because they're not brittle, they're rubbery. So when you cut with your tool, you go in at the beginning of the cut and you have to come out at the end of the cut, or you would just like rip the rubbery stuff. With lino, with traditional lino, which is this wood flour and cork flour and linseed oil, all pressed down onto Hessian, it's naturally brittle. So when you put your tool in and stop, it will snap at the point you stop cutting. So for me, the traditional lino means I can do a lot more intricate mark making. I think if I used the vinyl with this sort of non-snappy vinyl, I would be very tempted to always work in kind of scoopy cuts because that's kind of the easiest way to work with the tool. So I think my work would lose out that way. The other thing about it is that if you use a printing press, and sometimes I'm leaving raised bits of lino and clearing away around them, and the raised bit of lino might be about 1 millimetre or so. And if it's the vinyl, when you print on a press, you can actually you can kind of squash it, so you get like instead of a very thin, crisp line, you get like a double line almost, because you've squished it a little bit. So that's kind of why I don't use it. Yeah, so I'm a little bit leery about that. The traditional lino always gets a bit of a bad rap because it does go off, but it takes a long time to go off because it's got linseed in it. Linseed oil naturally hardens over time. And so if the lino is old, it becomes very brittle. If you sort of think about it, like an old kitchen floor is quite snappy, and you can't cut it. Ben is making it. Well, I guess kitchen floors aren't made of lino anymore, but they used to be.
It's coming back.
It's coming back. Thank you, Richard. Yeah, lino is coming back.
It's the idea of a kitchen floor being snappy.
Well, if you've ever had to lift an old kitchen floor and it's kind of come off in bits, that's what happens.
They do harden up.
They definitely do.
So, yeah, if you get lino, it should be old traditional lino. It should be flexible at room temperature and nice. With that, I'm just checking if we've got any questions. No, I think we're okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course you can, Richard.
When do you decide whether it's going to be a lino cut or a wood cut?
Oh, right.
That's
a really good question. So the decision about lino cut and a woodblock print is, I guess, I've done a lot of work in lino recently, and now I've gone back to woodblock. And weirdly enough, woodblock printing now, I tend to be very textural in woodblock. So I do a lot of layers and textures and things. And with the lino, it's more sort of thin sheets of colour. I guess with woodblock, I tend to work in quite an angular way. It kind of suits cutting at angles. So it suits some images and not others. And I'm just trying to think how I decide. Usually it's kind of based on just a feel for the place. Like looking at these ones, for example. So this one here of this elderly sheep, this might make quite a nice woodblock because it's got kind of potential there for doing the background in quite a Japanesey sort of way, and there's quite an angular structure to the rocks here, and also I quite like the idea of having a shadow block, a wood block that you can print in shadow. And you can separate the colours more easily because Japanese woodblock is a multi-block process, so you can keep colours very clean. Whereas something like this one, for example, would be perfect for a lino cut because there's going to be masses of detail and then this really dark, almost black overlay. So that's quite graphic. So here, with this one, this would kind of lend itself to a lino cut because it would be sort of slightly more graphic. So it just depends. Sometimes it's sort of maybe to do with having a piece of wood grain that I can work with, like the one that I'm doing on the film series on YouTube. I just had this amazing plank of wood that I wanted to use, and I've hung the whole print around a piece of wood, really. So I'm just checking. Oh, yeah, Claire says, when you buy your lino on a roll, which supplier do I use? Yeah, Ben is answering for me. Yeah, hand printed, so a big roll of lino. What I do is if I buy lino on a roll, when I get it home, I unroll it and then cut it and stack it in big chunks rather than leaving it on a roll, because then it has a chance to flatten before you use it. Otherwise it can be a bit curly.
Do you do that, though?
Yes, I do. Or I used to. Now I make Ben do it. Yeah, and so on the wall behind me, if I get Ben to lift up the camera, I can show you some of the prints to show you the difference between woodblock and line cut. So we're just going to move the camera slightly here.
This could be very, very sick making.
Yeah, apologies if it's a bit sick making.
I was just going to turn the camera around, but I think that would be too unpleasant.
Right, Ben has just unscrewed the camera and he's going to show some of my work so we can have a little look. So if we go and look at these ones here, so these little ones here, these are Japanese woodblock prints, and hopefully you can see what I was saying about the textural quality there. These are Yorkshire, these are the North York moors, and with this one you can see the sky it's done with these bleeds of colour, sort of very traditional Japanese approach there. And this one is again lots and lots of layers, so different blocks sitting one on top of the other so that you've got this layering. And again, can you see how sort of angular everything is, all those trees and stuff like that. And then we've got the birds down here, my rooks and honesty here. And again, you can do these lovely shadings with Japanese woodblock. And you see how the colours are quite defined and split from each other. And that's because there's multiple blocks at play there. You're not layering up the inks, you're actually splitting the colours here. So you can be much more flexible. So if you look here, just to give you an idea of how it works, with something like that, where you can see the rook through the honesty petal, you have a block for the rook, and then you have a block for this part of the honesty, and then a block for this piece of the crow, and you just print them at different colours, and that gives you that transparency there. So again, Japanese woodblock allows you to do that.
Staying with Japanese woodblock.
So this bigger one, this is, again, Japanese woodblock. The other thing about it is size, because, oh God.
It's very sick making. Apologies, everybody.
Yeah, sorry, it's a bit sick making. So the other thing is size. So Japanese woodblock is always printed by hand rather than in a printing press. So as long as you can manage the paper, you can kind of go to any size. So with this one, again, I wanted that very Japanese shading feel. And the way this one works is that this block here that's doing this first bit actually goes right to the top. And then the next block starts here and goes right to the top. And then the final block starts here and goes right to the top. The tree is just printed over everything because it's darker. But every single layer has to have a hole cut in it so that when I print these little maple leaves, they're bright red and there's no interference from any of the other blocks. So I had to have little holes for those. And this one, again, I like white space. I quite often use white space. Yeah.
Right, we're coming down
so
there.
the paper, what paper are these printed on? So the two little ones of Yorkshire that I showed you are printed on Shiramini. So it's the Shiramini that comes on a roll from our origami factory. And I think this one is printed on, this is on washi too, and I think that must be Shiramini because I don't think I've got any other big enough washi to print that on. And then if I come out the way, we do a sort of transition to lino cut. But
Right. You want to start
we want to start
in
with
that
this
corner?
one, which is
Okay.
again on a Japanese paper. So this is on the Kitakata paper that I showed you guys on the first Lino with Laura film. And it's very lightweight, delicate paper. And I wanted it to be a very sort of delicate lino cut. So now, instead of being separate blocks, we're now talking about reduction print. So that is a reduction print.
Okay, we're going to go down
Yeah.
to Gap and Hill.
Right, gap in the hill. Yeah, there we go.
Too many shadows here.
Yeah, we're trying to dodge the shadows a bit. So this one is lino, and again, it's like I was saying before, this sort of love of the transparent background and the sharp foreground. So lots of extender in the background there, and trying to get movement. You can see the kind of, and also when I'm designing a print, I'm always trying to get it to balance. So hence the sort of little gap there, and then you've got a waterfall up here, but I've put this sheep in just so that it balances out a little bit. And then this little one here, again, is a lino cut. So with this one, I'm using a technique where I'm wiping quite a lot to create depth. So I'm inking up the block, but then I'm wiping some of the ink back off. So there are lots of layers on that, but they're wiped away because I wanted to give that kind of very textured feel that you see in the hillside. And you can see the ink is quite scanty there. I'm not, I don't worry about having a kind of completely flat inked block with lino. Sort of convention says that lino should be very flat colour and it should be very sort of cohesive, but I quite like it when it's scanty and it's kind of textured like that. And again, just that little white building in there just to balance everything up. And the final thing we're going to make you look at on this wobbly camera is this one of the sheep, and this one I've used a dip pen and ink on the lino, direct onto the lino there, to draw on the lino, and then I just cut away everything that's not ink basically. So that's quite a nice way of mark making, and that's when that snappiness of the lino is really useful, because you can imagine trying to do this kind of stuff if your lino isn't snapping off as you cut it, would be quite difficult. So I'm sort of very dependent on traditional lino for doing that. So that's just a sort of little look around what we've got up there. So thank you very much to Richard, who has hung all those for us. So yes, the textures of ink and the accuracy, the accuracy of registration, that's something that's really important, because I think the more random you are with inking, kind of the better you have to be with registration, because otherwise it just looks like you don't know what you're doing. You've got to sort of, something's got to be tight if the inking is very loose. So is the print of Doris going to be a woodcut or a lino? The print of Doris is going to be a lino. I haven't got the drawing with me, but it's a picture of her on my desk, sort of rocking up pieces of paper. So I think I'm going to do the animal ones as a lino, but I'm working on two little bird ones as woodblock prints at the moment. So you can see those on my Instagram or Facebook. If you look at those, I'm going to be showing the cutting and printing of those, and we'll probably make a YouTube film about that as well. So when I'm designing a lino print, I quite often am looking for kind of negative space as well. So I'm thinking about this shape here against this shape here, And I've got like a rough idea of the size I'm going to do it, but I might sort of add bits on and chop bits off. I'm sort of quite fond of cutting things down or growing things. So if I'm doing a set of pictures, then I'll work within a particular size frame, but I don't like doing that as a rule because I sort of like will be halfway through drawing it and then think, well, actually it would be better if they had more space here, or I don't like the sky being too big or something like that. So it's constantly changing.
How many drawings would you go through before you...
Oh, right, yeah, that's a good point. Let me show you the drawings I have gone through for this. So, okay. So here is the original sketch.
That's a bit different.
Which is a bit different, as you can see. I mean, the sheep are down here.
Do you want to come up closer?
Yeah, sorry. Here is the original, one of the original drawings. Here. And you can see really different. We've got the farmhouse and we've got like there's a wall here and more sheep and stuff. So that's what it was like. And so I would do a sketch normally, and I would take photos and stuff.
And that's roughly a sketch from life.
Yeah. So this is how it is, and so it's giving me the idea, and then I would do, if I got any here, thumbnails. I would normally do, yeah, so little thumbnails. See, my drawing just gets better and better. Yeah. Just working out where things are. So I'm kind of working out where things are going to be. And here, I've now got, like, here is the barn and the trees up here, so I've kind of worked that out, and here's the wall coming down here, except I haven't quite worked that out, and here's the sheep. So you can see, I'm kind of getting
Very
there.
much your sheep, love.
No, it's not, well, here's and then I drew this lovely sheep, and it's got nowhere to go, because I couldn't work out how to put it into the landscape. So I like the sheep, so I might hang on to that, that might be useful for something else. But it's not going anywhere. And then I've got to this one that I'm working on at the moment, and it probably doesn't show there, but there is an absolute myriad of rubbing out going on there, because it takes me a while to arrive at what I want. So I draw and rub out and draw and rub out.
You can sort of see.
And is that in the field, or...
No, this is me at home.
Right.
No, there's a big confession time about being a landscape artist, is that I'm not really very good at being out in the field, I know. One of the problems that I have is that I'm really, really scared of heights, and I get very, very scared. And we've been around some amazing places this week, and most of the time I've been petrified because it's been cliffs and hills and waterfalls and stuff like that.
And holes in the ground.
And holes in the ground. We went to Butter Tubs, which is like just like these sinkholes in the ground, and that really nearly finished me off. So the kind of landscapes I love are the kind of landscapes I'm really scared to be in, which is not great. But the kind of sketching I do when they're out there is really, really quick. And then the design drawing bit I do in the studio, because it allows me time to stop shaking and calm down and think my way through things. And I work much more effectively like that. And for years I used to feel really bad about it, because I felt like if you're a proper artist, you should be like out there in the field with your painting or whatever, doing these beautiful sketchbooks that everyone would look at and think you were a genius and it was all going to be lovely. And I just don't work like that. That I work much better sitting down, like doing a maths problem, where I try and I try and I try until I get to the right answer. So, you know, I kind of realise that that's just what suits me, and that's the way that I work. And it means that the landscape is then going through the filter of my mind and what I remember is important about the place and what I want to say about it. so I've kind of got over that, but I still want, I wish I had beautiful little sketchbooks. I still feel that I would like
So
that.
Kevin wants to know if we went behind Hard Draw Falls.
No, we didn't. It was really. I mean, this is this one, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is this one, folks, that Kevin was talking about. Yeah, there, you can actually kind of walk around the back of that, and there were lots of signs up saying that you shouldn't, so we didn't. But I wouldn't have gone there anyway. And then we went to Swaledale Scar, is it? Swaledale Scar, yeah. And that one you're supposed to climb up the waterfall to get to the next place.
To the next level.
To the next level.
It's like a computer game.
Richard's done it.
And yeah, Richard has done. Richard has actually climbed it. So, and he's lived to tell you that. And there was nothing on God's earth that was going to get me up that, so we went up the hillside instead.
Yeah.
Because
when I come to print this, I should also say that I draw in all the detail. It doesn't mean it will end up in the print, because this is going to be very faded out. So I'll cut all the tiny detail here, but when I print it, that probably not all of it will be visible. So sometimes, you put in the work and you cut it out and everything, and it doesn't quite make it to the final print. But it's worth it to do the work because you get a much more fluid picture. So I quite often, when I'm doing a design drawing, I'll sort of fall in love with a bit of the print and then decide it doesn't fit or it doesn't work as a whole and have to get rid of it. So there's quite a lot of things get chopped out that I would quite like to save. Yeah. Oh yes, somebody is saying about these Yorkshire ones. They are at Bank. There are some at Bankside at the moment. Yeah, I've got some in the gallery at Bankside down in London. If you are down there, that's near Tate Modern. I've got some prints in the summer exhibition, which is still on. I think it's on until 26th of September. So that's there.
Details on your website.
Yes, details on my website. Yep. Which is lauraboswell.co.uk. You can find it all there.
So Glynis would like to know how many blocks you would recommend for a beginner to start doing Japanese woodblock.
Yeah, now that's an interesting one. I would keep it to 4 or 5. And I had a long conversation about this with someone who teaches Japanese woodblock, and she was all for starting with something incredibly basic. But what I would say is what you need to do with the print, if you're learning to print, when I teach, I try and do this, is you need something interesting enough to keep your interest throughout the process. So if you choose something that's really, really simple, you can get bored of it before you've kind of learnt enough through printing it. So if I was going to do a Japanese woodblock, I would say maybe 4 blocks, and bear in mind that especially with Japanese woodblock, because you're inking up with brushes, you can have them multicoloured, you can put shadings on, you can change the colours, you can wash them off and go in a different colour. So there's a lot of variation. So you should be able to design a fairly simple picture, either an abstract one, or I've forgotten the opposite of abstract. What's the art word? Figurative. So you can either sort of design a figurative picture or an abstract one in 4 blocks that should be complicated enough to keep your interest, but simple enough for you to be able to manage it and still get a decent print at the end of it. So that's. Yeah. Oh, right. So Matthew is saying that the rubbing out, the drawing and rubbing out and drawing and rubbing out. Yeah, I don't know why they don't tell you that at school. Because I do it all the time. I draw and I rub out, and sometimes I cut bits out, and sometimes I stick bits of paper over, and sometimes I attach bits of paper. And occasionally I talk to school children or they come and look at what I'm doing and they're always like, you're allowed to do that? We didn't know that. And, as long as the end result's all right, it doesn't matter that the drawing bit it's just part of the journey, really. So I don't get too hung up about that. Though I have to say my son does amazing sketchbooks, which are absolutely beautiful, but I try not to be too jealous. So here the other thing when I'm drawing is that I'm looking a lot at stylising reality, but it still has to work as reality. So, like, things have got to have weight to them. You've kind of got to know with rocks and stuff, they've kind of got to look heavy, and things like a dry stone wall, how it fits into the grass at the bottom so that it looks like a proper heavy wall. So I spend quite a lot of time trying to work out how to make things look like the sort of right weight and stuff like that.
Where does the sketching help above taking a photograph? So you could
So,
easily
yeah.
rock up and take a photo and then walk away.
Which we do.
Yeah, we do take loads of photos. That's a really good
photographs.
question from Richard about the difference photograph drawing. The thing about a photograph, and bear in mind, unlike Richard, I'm not a photographer. Richard takes amazing photographs, but I am, when I take a photograph of a scene, I'm just catching the whole scene for information. When I do one of my very scrawly drawings, I'm thinking, I really like the shape of that against the shape of that, and I'm pulling out of the scene exactly what it is that I think will be the in, if you like, into making the print interesting in the end. My drawings are all about finding what it is about the subject matter that's going to give me a print that's going to interest me and catch the interest of people who look at it. So when I take a photograph, that's great because that tells me about things like how a dry stone wall sits in the grass, what shape the stones are, why it looks heavy like a wall. What it doesn't tell me is that I really like the angle of that wall as it goes up the moor. So I would say sketching is information about what the print's going to be. Photography is information about getting that right, if you like. So they're quite
Your
different.
photography.
My photography. Yeah, yeah, Ben would hate to be left out of this conversation.
Yes.
So Ben takes loads of photographs, and like Richard, Ben is a photographer, so he goes out and he takes lots of beautiful photographs, and quite often his photographs teach me a thing or two about the landscape that I will use in a print. But I just find there's something about, and also when I draw, I'm making a very visceral connection between what it is I'm seeing and down on paper, so it kind of sets things in my mind. I remember things better as well.
But often when I take a photograph of a scene that you're drawing, my motivation for taking the photograph is similar to yours. I'm looking at shapes and trying to take a photograph that makes that composition work.
But also the other thing about it is that, as you can see from how I've arrived at this drawing that I'm showing you tonight of these two sheep in the field, it's completely different from what was actually there. What I've done is I've seen these sheep and the field and the farm in the background, and I thought, oh, I like that. But then I've just pulled it all apart and stitched it back in a completely different way that's made a picture that pleases me and works in the way that I want for this particular job. So, I wouldn't be without the photography for a moment because it's essential to what I do. but nor would I be without the drawing. So it's kind of both are very important. And I think photography often gets a bad rap for artists who work in sketching, because there's also this kind of idea that you shouldn't refer to a photograph, and I think that's, you know, I don't know many artists who don't, to be honest, but you know, maybe there are a few, but I don't. I take lots of photographs.
It's an interesting concept to decide whether you refer to a photograph or you slavishly copy a photograph. I think that's the big difference.
Yeah, I mean, working from a photograph, I would find very difficult because a lot of my time is, you know, I edit things down all the time. I'm sort of simplifying things down all the time, and I would find that very difficult. But other people do like to work from photographs. I mean, my sister paints, and she quite often paints from a photograph. She'll set up something and take the picture and then work from the photograph, and that works for her. But I don't tend to work like that. I change everything all the time, so I'm constantly kind of altering things.
Is there a perspective element to it as well? Are you flattening the perspective with your style?
I think I was away when they taught perspective in school. I don't think. I always get a bit antsy about perspective because I know that there are like a million rules that you have to follow and stuff like that, and I tend not to do that. But yeah, there is a flattening of perspective because I guess having spent time out in Japan, they have such a different feel for perspective and composition and stuff like that. I mean, given that a lot of my work is about space and distance, there is a lot of perspective in it, but it's kind of a loose perspective, and I never have any problem with bending that and changing it.
But for you, perspective is often more about tone and density, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I tend to control perspective in terms of sort of transparency and pushing things back with colour and stuff. But I do sort of work at
Christine Riley says we were all away.
We were all away. Well, that's good to know. It's like when people ask me about like the rules of composition, and I know there are rules of composition, but again, I think it's really important sometimes to go with your gut feeling about stuff like that, because what the world is interested in is your view of what you see. Your job is kind of to be the translator, the filter for like taking a picture of, let's say, the landscape, and then it goes through you and it comes out the other side as a piece of art. So what people are really hanging on is your view of things. So I think rather than sticking with like general rules, it's good to go with how you feel. I mean, by all means, rules are kind of useful if you need help, and they're useful as a guide, but if they don't work for you, I think it's good to just go with your gut instinct. I was talking to a guy who makes paints the other day, Michael Harding, who makes oil paints and soon to make watercolours. And he said, like, people ask me what paint colours I should buy when they're going to buy paints, and they think there should be a rule about you must have this colour and you must have that colour, and you put together a kit. And he says, what I say to people is go and stand in front of the display and just choose the ones you like. Just go for the colours you want. And I think that's true with how you compose a picture and things like that. You go with what excites you. I'm always making things bigger or smaller or deeper or higher because that's what excites me, and that's what makes an exciting artwork at the end of it.
So Anne Rosenthal has coined a new phrase for your style of perspective.
Oh God.
It's now called atmospheric perspective.
I love that. That makes me sound like that makes me sound like Turner, which I like very much. That's the sort of William Turner thing.
Matthew Walton says quite rightly, I think, surely the rules of composition are like music theory. They describe what people are doing rather than prescribing what they can do.
That is a good
I think
point.
that's
That's
really
a really good
Yeah.
point. I think where it goes a bit awry, and sometimes I teach people who come to the class who like say, oh, but I have to do this, or I have to work out as well.
However, Matthew is also a person who is sitting there starting to carve a lino cut of an octopus eating cherries on a train. So can we really
Can we really take
any
his...
notice of what he's saying?
Can we
I'm
have
not
a
too
picture?
sure.
Can we have a picture at
Yeah,
the end of it?
pictures,
That
please,
is
Matthew.
really, really cool. So, yeah, I mean, like I say, I worry about things being physically correct, so they don't look like they're floating. They're not defying the laws of gravity. They look like they're wet. But I don't like think, oh, I must go by the golden rule and divide my picture up into thirds or anything like that. So. I stop worrying about stuff like that. And I sometimes get people who come and tell me that you can't do things with lino because they've been told...
Because they've never seen it before.
Well, you know, that it's like people are told that lino will break down if you cut more than a certain amount of way, or you can't use more than 40% extender, stuff like that. And I don't really sort of do anything. I just push things until they break, and then I know where they've
I
gone
think
to.
we're showing our ignorance. Apparently, atmospheric perspective is an art to them.
It is an art term.
Yeah,
well,
another one
I
is aerial perspective,
aerial.
which we use, which is about putting things higher up in the picture.
Oh, right, okay. So it shows how much I know about the sort of rules.
We should soon be wrapping up, love, because it is 9 o'clock.
Good. Okay. I'm just having a quick read. My screen froze, so I'm a bit behind. Christine points out that's why young children's drawings are so alive and interesting. I think it is because certainly when my son was young, his drawings were always about kind of movement and frenetic, and they were great. And they worked really well. And I think, again, because he wasn't like trying to sort of pin things down too accurately, he just wanted to get the image on the canvas. Good.
Very quick sneeze there.
Okay, so I think we are at time. So again, if you are near Muker, do come to the Old School Gallery, which is an absolutely beautiful place and full of lovely art. I very selfishly made it all about me this evening, but there are other artworks on the wall which are also delightful. Other artworks are available. So yeah, do join us there. And next time that I'm here, I will be back in the studio. So and Morgan the Whippet behaved herself impeccably. I don't know if any of you saw her, but she was here. Being in Yorkshire, we felt we should have a whippet, but next time we're here, we'll have the cat. So thank you very much, and we'll join you again another time.
Keep waving, love.
So I have to keep waving while Ben tries to switch off the machine. We couldn't get connected.